Okay. In this lesson, we're going to go ahead and talk about working with density. Now, we've already discussed this a little bit here inside of the XGen window. Oh, and I should mention we are in lesson 05 begin. You could see I went ahead and changed the color. I added a tiny bit of blue to the tip color, put the base to black. For me, now both in line and card mode, it's just a little bit easier to see what's going on. Again, feel free to use any colors you'd like. I'm sure as I work with this later on, my eyes will become numb to these colors and I'll switch to something else. Whatever works. So before we go too much into actually combing the fur, I want to again talk about density. Now, we discussed over here that we typically want to make sure we're at something like interpolated. So if we do make changes and move up and down, at least we can preserve our groom. However, notice that there's no way to map this. I can bring it up and down, but let's say I don't want fur on the hands, which, again, for the sake of time and probably the fact that I'd want a very different type of fur on the hands, I'm probably going to make the hands not have fur and maybe just have it kind of ride a little bit up onto the top of the hand over here. I also don't need any fur on the top over here where kind of the head's been lopped off, as well as on the underside. It's just going to be a waste of time and it's going to look strange. So to go ahead and make those types of changes, they have given us an option. We have to make these changes inside of our primitives. There is no way for us to actually get rid of these guide hairs. I've not found a way to do that at least. But again, it doesn't really matter because they're not what are not what is there's some good English for you. They're not what is I can't say that. They aren't going to be rendered anyway. They're just there for us to do our combing and things like that. You see, we can just kind of completely hide them anyway. And if I hit generate, you could see we still have those tubes appearing. You notice they appear as a brown color. We'll discuss why they appear the colors they do later on. So let's go ahead and jump to the primitives tab. We want to tell XGen not to produce primitives in certain areas. And it's actually relatively easy to do that. If we look at our density over here, you'll notice that there's a mask, which is currently connected just to the density slider. We don't really want that. We want to control it with an image. Now, it's important to keep in mind that XGen does not use traditional textures. It uses PTEX maps that don't make use of UVs. However, we're not going to be using any type of software that can actually paint PTEX maps, things like Mudbox. So I'm going to show you guys a workaround we can use. So what we need to do is begin just by going over here, clicking this arrow and hitting Create Map. What this is going to do is create a new PTEX map. A resolution of 15 should work just fine. In fact, 10 would be fine too. And a starting color of white's perfect. We'll hit Create. And you'll notice it's going to bring up our painting options. And actually, I can double click over here. And here is kind of our traditional artisan interface. Now, even though this does paint traditional kind of just texture maps, there's a little save button right over here that when you kind of highlight over it, it'll actually bake it into a PTEX map. So what that means is I could just come in here, paint a little bit, hit save, and then when I re-preview it, you can see, don't mind that it cut the top and bottom. Remember, it actually only previews a certain area. You can see it's gone ahead and eliminated that area. So there is a little problem with this. So it works great in these big kind of open areas, kind of like that. I'll just again hit save, re-preview. But on occasion, you'll have a little one that kind of sticks out over there. We can fix this typically by using a harder brush, which actually I already am. If you use a soft brush, this doesn't work very well. Let's see, I just do that over there. Notice if I go ahead and hit save now, re-preview, it's still full of hair. It's just less dense. You have to use this kind of hard edge one, and you can see it works a little bit better. However, the big issue that I have with it is it's absolutely horrible wherever we have any kind of significant seam. So for example, the hands are what I don't want any fur on. So let's say I go ahead and I'm using B to expand the size of the brush, just typical artisan control. In fact, let's go ahead and actually flood everything with white so that I get fur back over there. Let's go ahead and remove paint from the hands. Again, I'm using this full hard edge brush here. We can always paint the tops of the hands back in later. Just go ahead and paint that up right there. And I'm going to make sure I really kind of get in there and get as much painted as I can. Let's go ahead and hit save and preview. And you'll notice there's still little hairs that stick off. And I find that sometimes it's almost impossible to actually get rid of these. You can see I'm kind of painting away in there, but I can't quite get rid of that entire seam. I can, let's go ahead and hit save over here, re-preview, and I've lost, you can see a couple of them. Oops, actually I've kind of lost everything there. Actually, I did pretty decent over there. It's better than I actually expected. But you can see there's still little ones hidden in there. You can play with this. Oh, there's a few that I missed right there. You can play with this and try to get a good result, but ultimately it can just be infuriating because those seams don't work very well with this painting tool. It just misses them. So there is an alternative. The alternative is you can use a map you paint in another application. For me, I'm going to paint mine inside of ZBrush. Now, in order to get this to work, just paint something here. It doesn't matter what, just make sure you create a map. And again, paint something. Be sure you hit save, and then, exit the tool, whatever. Let me go ahead, close that off right there. We'll preview, and we could see that, yeah, it's horrible. However, even though it's using a PTEX map, it's still going to be using the kind of traditional texture map that it created in order to use this paint tool over here, because Maya does not actually straight paint PTEX maps, not with Artisan. So if we go to our Hypershade, oops, sorry about that, rendering, Hypershade. New Hypershade is fantastic, by the way, if you've not used it yet. If we come over here to textures, you'll notice that it's actually created a file texture. Now, it's not showing up right now. I've actually had this issue quite a bit recently. There it goes. Now it appeared. Sometimes this doesn't appear at all for me. And what we can do is actually replace this texture with one that we paint ourselves. And again, you can paint it in any application you'd like. And what it's going to do is not necessarily add it onto our mesh. It's going to load it into that paint tool. So let me show you how this works. I've gone ahead and already painted a quick map inside of ZBrush. This is not going to be the final one. I'll show you kind of how I'm making that one. This is just a quick test map I made. I'm going to come here to my image name, and it's called density.bmp. So you can see quick map from ZBrush. I'll open that up, and you can see it switches it in. Again, nothing's going to change here just yet. We'll go over to XGen. I'm going to go here to the painting, and I'll click to paint. And notice what happened. It did not load the last map. It loaded this new one where I've already painted out the top, the bottom, and the hands. Again, all it really did is kind of look at that image that was stored away temporarily in the Hypershade and just throw it on screen. What I can do now is click this button to now convert this image into a PTEX map. I'll go ahead and click and do that. Hit the re-preview, and boom. We now have much, much cleaner results. And honestly, it's so much easier to paint, again, in an application that's a bit more designed for three-dimensional painting. Maya's Artisan is a little on the slight archaic side. I know it's a mean thing to say, but it's not quite what the new painting applications are. Okay, so I think this is a good place to go ahead and stop this lesson. Now, actually, before I do that, if I go to grooming here and turn this on, you will notice the splines do appear everywhere. Don't worry about that. Again, they're only actually going to be created and rendered where that density map allows them to be created and rendered. So in the next lesson, I'm going to, actually what I'll probably do, since it's not really a ZBrush painting tutorial, I'm actually going to go ahead and paint this map inside of ZBrush, probably in between lessons. I'll paint a nice version of it. I will show it to you in ZBrush and how I'm exporting it. And then we'll go ahead and apply that to our fur so that we can go ahead and jump right into beginning to comb our fur and really beginning to kind of stylize it, making it look pretty cool. So I'll see you guys in the next lesson.